Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Deveney from Heavy.com Sports. I've got Steve Bulpett with us. He is our NBA Insider, and we're going to talk about what is a very interesting week in the NBA, where we're going to have the Brooklyn Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers meet in Philadelphia. A much anticipated game. Ben Simmons will not be playing, but word is he'll be there, which, you got to give him a tip of the cap for that. But certainly, given the way the last couple of months has unfolded, this is a highly anticipated game. The Nets have gotten their act together there with the win last night. They looked pretty good. Defense wasn't great, but Kyrie Irving with 50 points, they score 132. They are now number 8 in the Eastern Conference, 33-33. They've got 16 games left, and I guess, Steve, you spoke exclusively with Sean Marks just the other day, the general manager of the Nets. Who hasn't done a lot of talking, but you were able to have an exclusive chat with him. 16 games. Is that enough for them to get things together? What do you think, and how did Sean Marks feel about that?
Well, taken in order, and the least important of those questions first. How do I think? I think it can be enough, but it's not so much the 16 games. Well, they have to survive a play-in situation.
Yeah.
If they can do that, then I think the key would be, that first round series would be really the getting it together part. They've got enough talent to win the whole damn thing. But in terms of getting it together, getting cohesive, going through a good first round series would do that, I think, for them. In terms of whether Sean Marks thinks it's enough time, he certainly hopes so. I mean, he's not taking anything for granted, as he pretty well stated clearly in the story. He knows that nothing is a given, nothing. So they know they've got the pieces, whether they can fit. And like when I mentioned him, needing to get things onto the computer chip so that all your movements, or most or much of your movement, becomes instinctive. That's a hard thing to do, but it can be done. And they clearly should be able to avoid the problem of what's, of the question of what's the hierarchy here. They know where the ball is going to go, primarily, secondarily, and so on. So, will they be fine? Who knows?
Yeah.
Could they be fine? Quite possibly.
Yeah, and they have a couple of challenges still ahead. I mean, look, if you make a deal like this and you pull everybody together in March, that's not much time to get it together. They still don't have Ben Simmons on the floor, and maybe that'll happen, in 3 days. Maybe it'll happen in a week. I think most people expect that it will come, by the middle of March or so. So perhaps sometime next week or around there. And then you still have the Kyrie Irving problem of him not being able to play home games. So it's not just that they're in the usual situation of trying to pull things together after a trade. They've got some other obstacles here as well.
Yeah, and look, in terms of when Ben Simmons is ready, if you want to just hone in on the science, I think that was pretty much fated to be as soon as the game in Philadelphia was over.
Yeah,
that would be when he's ready. And by the way, if he's going to be at the game, if he's going to be on the bench. I think you would agree. I would suggest 2 compound words: noise canceling headphones.
Yeah. Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, when he does play, he's going to face, wherever he goes, whether it's in Philadelphia or anywhere, he's going to face, a lot of ridicule, a lot of boos. He's going to get a pretty harsh welcome, even other places besides Philadelphia. So, I probably not bad to get him a little bit acclimated to that.
Nothing is going to, I'm not sure what the loudest noise in history, recorded history is, the loudest recorded noise in history. But I'm betting that that record would be challenged. If someone gets one of those decibel meters there, that record could be challenged should Ben Simmons ever step to the free throw line in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
If that was going to, that would be louder than being on a tarmac as a plane takes off. That's going to be bad. But he's got to know that's coming. But I'm not sure sitting there is going to change that, because the way to ignore stuff is to be so focused on something else you don't pay attention to it. That's he's going to need to play, and wherever he goes, look, whenever he goes to the free throw line in any arena, I dare say that if he goes to the free throw line in Boston, it's going to get loud.
Yeah.
Not that the people in Boston have anything against him. People in Boston quite enjoyed the fact that he was screwing up the Sixers.
Yeah.
But look, all he's got to do to be successful, to be a key component for the Brooklyn Nets, is play defense and move the basketball. Not bad at all. Post up some, get out on a break, take advantage. But get the ball into the hands of Kyrie and Kevin Durant and play defense, and your life is good.
Yeah. It is a little different in terms of having a big three where now you've got one of the three. The question is always, okay, who's going to do the sacrificing, right?
Yeah.
We know who's going to sacrifice. We know which one of these guys is going to be the one to lay back and
give up shots. I don't want to shoot.
That's not going to be a difficult thing for him to get used to. So that'll be interesting to see how that comes together. It sounded like from the quotes that Marks gave you that he's apprehensive, that he doesn't know how this is going to turn out, but his attitude seemed to be, what else can we do except believe it's going to work? Like this is where we are.
Yeah. I think and let's say that, realize the trade was more than just Ben Simmons. They got two other important pieces in Andre Drummond, and even perhaps more important, Seth Curry. But I think he's afraid to say or to think. He knows better than to think we got the group that's going to work now, because they thought they had it before. I mean, last year you'd have had to say that the Nets were kind of odds on, but Harden misses games 2, 3, and 4 against the second round against Milwaukee with the hamstring. And then Kyrie misses games 4, 5, 6, and 7 with an ankle. And they lose in game 7 by, 4 points to the eventual champion? So how close were they to having it all last year? Without a whisker, again, you're missing, one of your key three for the last 6 games of that series. And they still had, they'd only had they'd had a couple of months to get it together with that group, right?
Right.
But so they were that close, and then they never really ran it back. There were Kyrie's vax situation, Kevin Durant's MCL sprain, and then Harden decides, I think I want to leave another place. And so there is definitely, and Mark's talked about it, but there's definitely frustration there that they never really got to see. So he's not going to say, okay, well, this time for sure we've got it to, because you're afraid to, you're kind of whistling past the graveyard. You're afraid to say, things are okay.
Yeah, that was one of the interesting things about the story as well, about some of the things that Mark's told you, was that it's so hard to put together three players like that onto one team. You really got to, everything has to fall right into line. You get the two max slots that you referenced in the story, and you're able to bring in Durant and Kyrie into those, and then you have to have the weird situation of a superstar of Harden's caliber coming onto the trade market. You just happen to have enough to be able to bring him to your team. All that stuff requires some serious stars to be aligned, and I really got a sense that he regretted at least not getting to see what that really looked like. That he really just at least wanted to see what that would be like before he had to break it up.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, you're 4 point. Was it the final score? Was that 4 points the difference in Game 7 last year?
I believe so. Yeah, and there was the 3-pointer that
or something like that.
Yeah, the 3-pointer that Durant took that his foot was on the line, and he said if he had a half a smaller shoe size, they win that series. So,
but just look at how close they were. I mean, look. I think Sean Marks is a bright guy, and I think he's a very good GM. I think he knows he's not a reactionary guy. He knows how to look short term and long term. But if you look at how that team got created, I mean, it to a good portion it fell in the Nets' lap. Yeah. When Kyrie is going to, first of all, that year he's going to stay in Boston. He's all set. He's going to stay in Boston, and he's recruiting other guys for the Celtics. A story we've written recently. And then all of a sudden, the quabbles with the younger guys in the team, and now he's gone. And the two max slots line from this story was obviously the quote Kyrie talking to Durant in the hallway in Charlotte at the All-Star game. 2 max slots, man. It's time, So that team, that championship run Nets version kind of fell into Brooklyn's lap to a degree, right? And you would think they might even have enough without having to add a James Harden, right?
Right.
Even bringing a James Harden in could kind of mess things up to a degree, because now you've got another mouth to feed offensively.
Right.
But there they were, that close, and that should have been by all rights, a championship team last year. Who's going to beat them necessarily if they're healthy? I said even anyway. So that close to getting it, it's got to be hard. And now, it's probably even more of a gamble now, because although you may be able to get Simmons back and have Simmons, Irving, and Durant, will the local ordinance be repealed enough so that Kyrie can play home games during the playoffs? I mean, there's a good bet that happens, but it's not for certain. So, so when I sat down with Sean, it's like we're looking at this season, and it's like this has been just one, calamity after another this year. Not to call an injury a calamity, but it was calamitous for the Nets. But one thing after another, and here it is, and you're still looking at the possibility that this could all turn out roses. And that's crazy to think. It's like a team like that goes through that much, you're fitting them for a toe tag usually. This is over. But, no, well, there's a chance where if it comes together, you could just steamroll the whole damn East and win the championship.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how things play out for them, especially if they can start to get on a little bit of a roll. Cleveland is 5.5 games ahead of them for the number 6. Toronto is 2 games ahead of them for number 7. They could probably catch Toronto. Cleveland's struggling, and Jared Allen is hurt. They've got Karis LeVert's got a back problem as well. It's not they do play Cleveland late in the year, so it's not inconceivable that they could get up to that number 6, get out of the play-in situation altogether. Be tough. I mean, they'd have to have a really, really strong finish, and Cleveland would have to continue to really struggle. But that's at least possible, and 6 is probably as good as they get. Problem with that is, okay, you're looking at entering the playoffs as 6, 7, or 8, which means you're probably going to play Miami, Philadelphia, Milwaukee. You're probably going to play one of those in the first round. And for a team that's getting itself together, man, that's going to be tough.
But any one of those teams is gettable.
Yeah.
I mean, you could a healthy and reasonably cohesive Nets team against anybody, who are you taking? Now, the only, and it's, I don't know how you do your prediction thing. When I look at those things, I always try to say, okay, if each team plays to its full capability, who would win?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're going to play to their full capability. But it'd be hard to think, to look past the Nets, certainly,
Yeah, it would be what a tough thing for Miami if Miami has this great season and they look good, and your first round opponent is the Nets. I think everybody would be rooting for a Nets Sixers first round, though. That would certainly be worth circling on the calendar, I would say. Did you get the sense? This was one other thing that I pulled from what I was reading that you wrote from your talk with Sean. Was, I guess, it almost seemed like, you kind of asked him at one point, or he was talking about, whether he was happy with the package that they got. And to me, it seemed like he was almost talking himself into being happy with the package that he got. Did you get that sense? What was your sense?
Not at all. And the way it came up was, and obviously when you're writing a story, you don't want it to be, I didn't want to make it, War and Peace. So you don't put in, full part of the quotes. But as the conversation went, I was saying that people they focus on the brightest light in a story, and obviously, and in a trade, and that's obviously what they're getting back from Philly, Ben Simmons. But Andre Drummond is really important. Another body they can throw at a Joel Embiid, another big body inside that can, grab up some rebounds, etc. But even more, Seth Curry, I think, is going to be huge, especially because you're not going to have Joe Harris, who was very much an underrated cog in the Nets wheel. The guy that can just, make you pay for having to sag into the middle on someone else. I think that's huge. And he was saying, that's, it's human nature. His full response was like, it's human nature to focus on the stars and things like that. But that part, and you've already seen some dividends from Curry and from Drummond. So it was not at all that he was talking himself into it. I think, I'm just surprised that people aren't talking more about those two guys. It's all about Ben and when's he going to play, and is he going to, be a powerful guy, or is he going to be a puddle?
Yeah, and considering they got 2 picks as well, and some flexibility with those picks, they have the pick this year, but they can punt that to next year if they want. And that might not be a bad idea, because it'll allow them some flexibility to make some trades in the offseason. They're in a better position long term as well to maybe make some moves that can that can help them in the long term. Depending on how the season, no matter what happens in the next couple of months here, they're going to be in a much better position this summer.
Yeah, and that's the other part that I really took away from this is that in the discussion, it was like, you try to build for, set up a team, your salary structure, your contracts, your depth chart, so that you can get yourself a good, 3, 4, 5 year run, but windows open and close all the time. And the temporal nature of the NBA is gotten crazy now. And Sean was talking about how, those Spurs teams that you could count on for a bunch of years, I mean, even as recently as the Celtics, the team they built in starting in 2007, 2008, they won the championship the first year. Then they had the Garnett injury that kept them from one. They get to the Game 7 of the finals in 2010. There was a good, run of a few years there that injuries eventually got in the way of. But it's hard. Like I said, he thought he had that group together.
Yeah.
And like they waited a year, right? On was it Durant at first, right?
Right.
They waited a whole year to start the clock.
Yeah.
Paid him a bunch of money to sit there and we'll give you some nice Brooklyn Nets swag, and so. But it can be here and gone,
Yeah.
Even coming off the disappointment of last year, they had to figure, well, we were so close last year. This is the year it's going to happen. We've got to be the favorite. And then, the vaccination regulation, Kyrie won't get vaccinated. And then, injuries come in, and again, we will focus on the stars, but the Joe Harris injury was big.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So, it's all so fleeting, and you can't count on anything, And this summer, right? Doesn't Kyrie have an option to leave if he wants?
He does. Yep.
Yeah. And if you want to count on, Kyrie and where his head's at on a given moment, I think Vegas even pulls those odds off their board.
Yeah, good luck to you on that. One last thing, Steve, and I know that this is something that Marks couldn't or wouldn't talk about, but something that I've heard is that there are a lot of owners and executives who would like to see the Nets push with the league for some kind of tampering. Now, the Nets don't necessarily have to initiate that kind of thing, but it would carry more weight if the Nets would initiate some sort of tampering idea between the Sixers and Harden, that there was contact there, that a lot of it was being done publicly, that some of the stories that came out were sort of orchestrated, and would like to see that investigated. The sense, just from what you were talking about with Marks, and the thing that I've heard is that the Nets don't plan to push that at all, and it seemed to me that what Sean was telling you is, they're looking forward at this point, that they're sort of done. He has a regret about the big three, but at this point they really want to just look forward.
Yeah. His thought right now is what can they do, not just the players, but what can they do as an organization to kind of hasten getting these guys on the floor together and cohesive once they get there. And he's talked about everybody from the players themselves to the coaches to the support staff. What can they do? But in terms of the tampering thing, we really didn't bring it up. And I'll tell you that, I've spoken about it with a number of other people. And yeah, teams may want the league to come down on Philadelphia, but every team is also pretty frightened that they'll be in the crosshairs at some point, because to a degree, I don't mean to make a blanket statement, but they all freaking tamper in some manner, form, whether it rises to the level of something that could be punished. They all kind of do it to a degree.
Yeah, before you make a trade, you want to probably check with that player's agent and just say, hey, it would be cool if he wouldn't have any problem, coming here, et cetera, et cetera.
We're about to give up a whole truckload of assets, and your guy's in the last year of his contract. Is he amenable to re-signing with us? you know.
Yeah. When you give GMs a chance to take a shot at Daryl Morey, they usually want to take it. So, Daryl, that's something Daryl's dealt with for a long time now. So,
I'm trying to think of what I should say it here but there's a quote from a person from another team that it's got to be unnamed, of course. Actually, I think I should check with you off the. But
fair enough. Let's
this way here.
No,
it's an interesting line. Yeah.
And I like Daryl, and
I don't want to get us in trouble. We're people
right.
But we don't want. I don't know if the FCC or who has regulations over us, or we might get called before the International Court in The Hague.
I don't want any of that. I don't want any of that. Well, Steve,
thank you, Sean. Let's go.
Yeah, right. No, that's all right. Steve, thank you very much. This was a really tremendous piece of work. Great job. And I encourage anybody who hasn't seen Steve's piece on the Nets and his conversation with Sean Marks, please check it out. Again, I'm Sean Deveney from Heavy.com. That's Steve Bulpett, our NBA Insider. And thank you, everyone, for joining us.